You've heard about per diem, but when it's time to actually roll it out, that's when things get tricky. Today, I'll walk you through how to do it right, avoid common pitfalls, and keep your drivers happy and with you. Welcome to Driven for Success, where we talk about payroll, recruiting, retention, and all the back office stuff small trucking companies don't always have time to deal with effectively. I'm Mike Ritzema from Superior Trucking Payroll Service. So, we're going to briefly recap per diem before we start. One of the things is it's a substitute for wage to give a driver money for meals and incidentals while they're on the road. So that's the important thing to know. But it completely complies with IRS regulations. We want to make it easy to understand. Any good per diem program will make it easy for your drivers to know exactly what's going on. We're going to reduce the taxable wages, which results in an increase in driver pay, an average of about $90 a week if they're gone 5 days. And it's, again, completely compliant with state and IRS regulations as long as the drivers qualify, which means they have to be subject to hours of service limitations and they have to be in multiple meals and incidental markets. So if you do those two things, the IRS loves you. $80 a day, you're all good. First, we're going to talk, and we're also going to talk about some common mistakes that companies make with per diem programs. One of them is paying a flat dollar amount per week, where you say, "Oh, I'm just going to give you $50 a week for per diem and call it good." Yeah, that doesn't really take advantage of the plan, and it might not be compliant if you're giving it to every driver, even the local drivers, or giving it to office people just to give it to them. That's a non-compliant plan, and that's IRS problems, which we don't want. Uh, Paying it by the mile or paying it as a percentage of wage. You're either going to overpay it or underpay it because the IRS allows $80 a day. They don't say you can pay it per mile as long as you don't exceed $80 a day. And if you do that, you're probably leaving some money on the table, both for the trucking company and the driver. And if you overpay it, you're out of compliance with the IRS and you're making reimbursement, you're making taxable wage appear as reimbursement, which is very much illegal. You don't want to do that. You do want to track, you know, make sure the driver's really working those days. Don't just assume they're working days or that they were out of town or whatever, that kind of stuff. You want to make sure of that. Most of the time, you're going to have that in your dispatch software. Your TMS should be able to tell you that. Look at the driver and see, oh, he went from here to there or she went from here to there. You should be fine. Make sure you label it on the pay stub. A good per diem program is going to do that too. So make sure they know what exactly how the math is working. And again, that goes to the last point of make it easy to understand. If you don't do that, you're going to have problems with drivers. I mean, nobody wants that. So if the drivers don't understand it, they're going to think that you're cheating them somehow. That's just a natural reaction. If you don't believe me, talk to any driver at a truck stop and ask them about their previous trucking company they worked for and how they got cheated by them. And then just, buckle up because you're going to be there for a while because they're going to go on and on. And it's not necessarily that the trucking company cheated them, but they felt cheated. And that you can't argue with that. A good per diem program also communicates it right out of the gate. You have if you're rolling out per diem to your company and you hadn't been paying it before, talk to each of the drivers. If you can get them together, great. But I understand that's not how that usually works. And just sit them down and say, hey, we're going to start paying per diem, and we're going to do this because it gets you more money in your check. You're going to make $90 more a week in net pay. And yes, we're going to save a little bit of money too, but we're not saving $90 a driver a week. So we're doing it to benefit both of us. And explain they're not going to care about like the IRS revenue procedures and things like that. That most of them will have heard about it. Oh yeah, I heard about per diem programs. That would be great. But some of them are going to also have heard about it in some other fictional way of, oh yeah, my buddy got into some place that had per diem and it screwed him over, and this is what happened, and now this and this and this. So you want to be able to answer some questions for the drivers right out of the gate. Questions are things like, is this legal? Which, yes, it is. And if they really want to know about IRS revenue procedures, they were in the previous podcast. They're on our website. You run right to them. Will my taxable pay go down? Yes, your taxable pay goes down. That is how you save on your net pay. That's how your net pay gets bigger, is that your taxable pay goes down. Another one is, will this hurt my Social Security? And this is a really important one because when I talk about per diem on social media, and I do talk about it a lot on social media, I will often get a disgruntled driver or two. There's a couple in particular that actually will respond back to me and say, well, it's a scam and my Social Security will go down and things like that. That is absolutely true. Your Social Security will go down. I don't dispute that. However, if you take a quarter or a third of that savings that you get, that $90 a week extra in your check, if you put $25 away into a retirement account, an IRA, whatever, any investment vehicle you want, you're going to end up farther ahead. The difference between your Social Security with paying per diem, and if you add in the money that you will have invested, you're going to come out ahead. And you're going to have access to it sooner if you ever need it for something, versus Social Security, which you can't get until you're at least 62. And that may go up. We never know. So one of the things I really recommend is that you acknowledge to the driver, yes, this is going to lower your Social Security. It will. However, if you put away just a piece of that extra money you're going to get, you still get to keep most of the money now, and you're still going to be ahead later. We all know Social Security is not a great investment vehicle. It is what it is, but it's not something that, wish I could put more into Social Security. Nobody's ever said that. So, yeah, they just got to be a little bit of responsible. Put it into a weekly IRA or something. They could even probably have a second direct deposit that goes into an account for them with an investment advisor, something like that. That would, then they get to keep $60 a week or $65 a week of the extra net pay, and the other 25 goes into that account. They'd be way better off. And so, but again, I'm stressing this because drivers are going to come and say this to you, and they're going to mean it, and you can't just go, oh, that's garbage, that's not true, or oh, it's just a little bit, or you can't minimize their concern. You got to give them a solution that says this is a better way, this is the way to counteract that, and agree with them. It's going to be different, so you want to make sure you've got that covered for them. And they'll say things like, can I opt out? And you say, absolutely. I would discourage them from opting out because I do think it's better for them. But if a driver says, if you make me pay per diem or make me get paid with a per diem program like this, I'm going to quit. You let them opt out. You try and show them things, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, how to roll out a program. You try and show them that it really is better for them, but you can't convince people of some things. There are a number of people, and maybe some of you listening, that think the earth is still flat. I can't convince you otherwise. I don't know how to convince you otherwise. So you just go around thinking the earth is flat. That's fine. As long as you can drive. I'm not paying you to drive. I'm paying you to drive a truck in that case. I'm not paying you for your opinions on geography. So you let them opt out. It's never worth losing a good driver. Even though you're going to save $2,000, $2,500 per driver per year, a good driver is worth more than that anyway. So never make that an issue. And don't make it confrontational either, because you don't want to be arguing with them about this. So now with all that said, how do you roll out per diem successfully? You have the meeting with the current staff, the current drivers, and you're going to do the same thing. It's kind of two things, but the same way. All your new drivers are going to do this at orientation. You're going to have a form in your new hire packet that explains per diem. It's going to be right along with the W-4 and the direct deposit paperwork and all that kind of stuff right in there, saying, hey, our company pays per diem. We do this because we want you to get more in your paycheck. It comes out of your wage as a non-taxable reimbursement and then gets given back to you. So you're even on the actual money that we pay you. You just pay less tax. And the next thing you want to do is you show examples of 2 checks. In the new hire paperwork or in the meeting with all your drivers or the drivers that are currently working and you're going to switch to a per diem program. Say, check number 1 is the way we used to do it. You had 2,500 miles at 50 cents a mile or whatever, right? 1,250 minus all the taxes gets you down to 900 or whatever. It varies for every different person. Check 2 is 1,250 miles. You were gone 5 days. So instead of paying you $1,250 in wage, we're going to pay you $850 in wage and $400 in per diem. And your check's going to be $1,000. So you just show them both to them and say, which one would you rather have? Would you rather have the $900 check or the $1,000 check? And they're going to answer, I would like the $1,000 check because it's $90 more. I'm rounding off, but you get the idea. And if they say, well, I don't know about this, have them talk to your other drivers. You're going to have drivers that understand per diem. You've got those drivers that are kind of mentors to your new drivers, and just convince them, and they'll convince everybody else, because that's where that's the people they're going to trust. They're not going to trust you. I wish they would. I think one of your goals as a small trucking company should be to get your drivers to trust you, but that's not as easily said as done. So, but you get the veterans to really get on board with this, and everybody else will come along. And again, you put right in there, you make them sign off that they want the per diem. It's just a good idea. It's not like legally required or anything, but it's a good idea, because that way you can point back to, look, we showed you this, you agreed to it. If you want to opt out, we'll let you opt out. But just so you know, we're not trying to pull one over on you. Because that's always the fear. The drivers always think that you're trying to get over on them, and that's not any good. It's not a productive work environment for you or for your driver. Make If they have questions, you should have like a one-page kind of an FAQ, as much as anything as we want to call it. Common questions and answers. Things like, will this hurt my Social Security later? Like we talked about, you put this in there. Will my taxable pay go down? Yes, it will. What do I do when I'm trying to get finance for my new car, new motorcycle, new home, new whatever, and it shows my wages less, and now they don't want to give me the loan? The answer is, we'll have a letter for you that explains that what we're doing to try and get them to include the per diem in your wage. It's listed on the W-2 in box 12 code L. So you can show that you're actually getting the money and explain how it works. Usually that's enough. If it's not enough, then maybe you don't want to buy that thing, which I know is a hard truth to have to hear, but it kind of is true. And have the mortgage people or the bank or whatever, they should be able to call your HR person. If you're one of our clients, we'll send you a letter that explains it. And if you're not one of our clients, ask us for the letter and we'll send you the letter that explains it. It's no big deal. We've done it before. So we're happy to do that for you again. But list all those things on there. And as your drivers ask new questions that you hadn't thought of before, add it to that list. You really want your drivers to feel comfortable with all this. It's so important. It's the only way it's going to work, is if your drivers understand that you're doing it for them, not to them. It's a big difference. So make sure you keep that in mind as well. And when they do have complaints about it, hear them out and let them know that they were heard. And then you give them the answers that you got to give them and things like that. But you want them to feel good about it, not just accept it, not just be like, fine, whatever. Look, we're trying to put $90 a week into your check. But again, it's got to be you and the driver versus the IRS. It's not you versus the driver, which many things are. So you want to kind of put yourself on their team. Like, yeah, look, we found a way. We heard this podcast. We saw this thing online. We got it vetted, and we found out that we can get you $90 more a week in your check. And we thought you'd want to do that. That really goes a long way. And this thing could be the thing that builds trust for you with your drivers on other things too, just by the way. Another successful key to the rollout is make sure your payroll does it correctly, of course. You have to be able to take it out of taxable pay and put it back in as a reimbursement. You got to make sure you do both sides. If you don't do both sides, you're going to have to be shorting your drivers or double paying them. Both of those are problems. They're different problems, but they are both problems. Finally, the best way to make this recruiting thing, or this per diem thing work, is promote it in your recruiting. It needs to be in your job postings. We pay the maximum IRS per diem allowed. You put that in there. Drivers that know about it are going to know what they mean. They're going to ask you about it. What is it? Well, it's $80 a day. By the way, at the end of this month, the new rates for next year will come out, and we will definitely be announcing what they are. They don't always change, and they changed a lot last year, so I wouldn't be surprised if they stay at $80, but it could go up even more, which means even more savings for your driver and even more savings for your trucking company. So we love those things. I hope I've covered everything for you. If you're thinking about using per diem and you're not sure if your setup is good to go, you want to see how much you could save, we have a per diem savings calculator at truckingpayroll.com. Just go to the per diem page and you'll find it right there. I can give you the URL, but it's really long. So just go find it and click it. That's the way to go. And hey, like and subscribe to this. Leave a review. Those things help more small trucking companies like you find these episodes and maybe get the knowledge they need to run their trucking company more successfully. And until then, we will see you next week and keep on trucking.